Hi again then guys, and welcome to another specific car review from Gran Turismo Sport, and this one follows on very nicely from the last episode that we featured in GT Masters, which of course was this car's arguably best rival, the Group 4 Ferrari, the 458 Italia. This of course is the Lamborghini Huracan, also Group 4, and it's interesting to see how similar all three variations of both of those cars are to each other in terms of the progression of the handling and the performance. Now of course, within reason you would hope that that was the case, because the whole point of the classes is to make it challenging and also to keep it competitive. However, not as many cars in the game follow almost the exact same trajectory as these three, because both the Huracan and the 458 are good handling road cars. I would say the Ferrari is the better of the two, but they're both pretty good in different ways. The Group 4 versions, well of course for this one we'll get to it in a second, but the Ferrari has fantastic handling. It's just that some people find it to be maybe sometimes a little bit underpowered on the straights occasionally, which is not surprising considering how neutered exotics have to be for Group 4, and that of course is an issue that I've talked about a number of times. But when you get to the Group 3 version, that's where it kind of falls off, because the Ferrari and the Lambo are both very quick, but they're also among the most challenging that you see players commenting about the most having trouble with. Of course the Audi R8 is up there as well, but these mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars tend to be the ones that players have more trouble setting up in a way that suits them, where the car isn't too slippery or too twitchy, and that interestingly applies to both the Ferrari and the Lambo. With Group 4 though, it's different, because this one, unlike the Ferrari, in fact unlike any of the Ferrari versions, is of course all-wheel drive, and it retains all-wheel drive in Group 4 as well. And I have to say that in particular is easily the best thing about this car, because it makes the handling remarkably forgiving. It's one of the most beginner-friendly Group 4 cars, I would have to say. And it's a good thing because, as I've mentioned before, with these severely neutered supersports and supercars for the Group 4 category, everything up to and including the Viper, the Veyron, that kind of stuff, they need to have something that's really good, because otherwise losing so much power just completely neuters what they should be capable of, especially against cars like the Scirocco, the Megane, and various others that are lower tier vehicles that are brought up to Group 4. So they already have good handling, and then you make them even quicker. These need to have handling at least, because they no longer have the advantage of straight line power. This one for instance still has technically a 5.2 litre V10 engine, but nowhere near the power. Of course the normal Huracan is more powerful than the Ferrari, it has just over 600 horsepower. This one on the other hand has just over 404, so way less. The torque is also a lot less at 278 pound-feet. Thankfully though, it's not ridiculously heavy. That being said, 1,365 kilos is certainly not the lightest thing around. Now, obviously you can drop the weight, you can increase the power, but with stuff like balance of performance or daily races, that can all change. So what can this car do with basically what you've got straight out of the crate? Just so that I don't give you too much of an idea of what this can do when it's tuned, because of course if I do that, then it might not be very good when it's not tuned. The Veyron, for instance, it's amazing when you drop the weight. It blew my mind, in fact, how good it was, but you will very rarely get that opportunity. So what's it like? Well, driving it here at Catalunya was one of the first, if not the first occasion, that I actually got into the car. Not just drove it in passing, but actually really considered what it was capable of. And I have to say, it impressed me very quickly, in fact. The car has very good handling. As I said, the grip is easily the best thing about it. The straight line performance, of course, is not the best thing around, but it's certainly not bad in Group 4. The acceleration off the line in particular is very good, and again, that is something that you might want to bear in mind under circumstances in particular where you can tune the car. Because off the line, a front-wheel drive car is not going to be as quick as this, and even a rear-wheel drive car will not necessarily be as quick as this because you've got that launch. And basically the difference that makes to what this car can do is huge, because you can tune the gearbox, in particular first gear, and increase the ratio to a much higher number, and that allows this car to have acceleration ratings that are up around, I think it's 8 or 9, which is a really high number for a car like this to have on its spec, especially when, once again, you've only got 400 horsepower to be working with. So in an interesting kind of way, this almost feels like the kind of car that Lamborghini should make, this lighter weight version of the Huracan with maybe a little bit less power, but a total track-focused version, almost like this little baby Lambo, if you will. And of course, that's not something that they're planning to do that I'm aware of, but this car kind of proves that that could actually be a really good idea. This maybe lower-tier Lamborghini, not an affordable one necessarily, but a more affordable one, kind of like what Noble did with the M12, where you're running way less power than a supercar, but it's more than making up for that with more downforce, lower weight, tons of grip, and as a result, it's a phenomenal track car. And that's essentially what this feels like. It actually feels more like a track-only version, like a club sport Huracan, if you will, rather than like a touring car, which is what a lot of these Group 4 cars feel like, especially the hatchbacks. They really do feel like BTCC or N24 style touring cars, or these kind of mishmash touring car, race car mixes when it happens to be a hatchback that it's based on, whereas some of the others, they don't really feel, of course, like GT3 cars. They're not powerful enough, they're not fast enough, they're not beefy enough. This one feels almost like what a Sesto Elemento might feel like if it were in Gran Turismo, albeit of course with a lot less power, because the Sesto Elemento is much more similar to what the Huracan ended up being. But this gives us an interesting insight into what something like a Huracan could feel like if it were in Gran Turismo. All-wheel drive, very compact proportions, essentially the same size as a Huracan, the lower weight, and of course you could drop the weight even further if you want it to really feel like a Huracan, and maybe improve the power up to, I believe it's like 560 that the Huracan has, something like that. So overall, as far as a Group 4 car goes, this is a very good option as far as I'm concerned. But in particular, I would probably recommend this one for definitely less experienced drivers. If you are new to Gran Turismo as a whole, but in particular new to using race cars against real people in online lobbies, this is an excellent car to go for. Regardless of balance of performance, regardless of tuning, it's such a forgiving car. The diff, it's very easy to tune, it's so responsive to tuning, the handling is fantastic, and if anything, it's a little bit more on the understeer side of things, which is not surprising for an all-wheel drive car, but the result is, it's very easy to drive. The handling is completely predictable, it never surprises you with what it's going to do, and of course the only payoff to that is it means it's not necessarily going to be the quickest thing out there. If you were to put this up against the Ferrari 458 in, say, a battle, my money would probably be on the Ferrari. But if you put a less experienced driver in both of those cars, I might put my money on the Lambo, because you can push it harder without needing to worry about the car spinning out or becoming twitchy, and that's a good advantage to have for less experienced drivers. If you're a pro, however, the car doesn't really offer anything that you would specifically need, so if you're a Lambo fan, then sure, go for it. Otherwise, I'd probably go with the Ferrari, if you are that more experienced level, really, of driver. But that's it overall for my thoughts on the Group 4 version of Lamborghini's Huracan, and of course the Huracan has a lot of tuning potential in all three of its forms, and will probably involve the Huracan in future videos as well, no doubt. But that's it for this particular episode. Of course, I will see you guys next time, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.